Yo, yo, what's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to a new video. It is Monday, should be Monday. Hopefully it's Monday. I pre-record a lot of stuff, so hopefully these should start coming out in the next couple weeks. So if you're new here, subscribe, check out my other stuff, give this video a like, leave some comments in the comments below. Use my links to buy some plugins, gear, whatever, because it would help me out a lot. Let's get into it. We're talking about bass today. There's this old plugin that I've used to use a lot. Plugin Alliance also has another one that I think is popular. It's the Subsynth. It's like the red plugin, but this one is the Bass Mint. By Unfiltered Audio, which is obviously still under the Plugin Alliance, so it's still available. They make other great plugins. Basically, essentially what you're doing is that you're synthetically adding sub or distortion, or you can see you have all these options of just being able to affect the mid only. You can just solo up the bass or the sub frequencies, mono the bass, whatever the case is. You can see that you have all these options. It's a very simple plugin. Obviously, there's a lot going on. In a way, you have like saturate, you can resonate, you can add an octave, and then to the synthesize that I'm talking about. But in this case, like I said, I just kind of tweaked it. I saved the setting. You can see it's called add sub. I also have the original setting, which was this sauce one setting that I have had for since years ago, and I've just recently kind of getting back into it. I'm producing a lot more, so I like to use either the Moog, Mini Moog, or the Juno bass synth plugin in my case. And I don't know, it's just always, those have always been good pieces for bass and stuff in songs, as we know, especially in the 80s and beyond that. And yeah, it's just the way that I'm currently just getting bass and stuff, obviously, besides 808s, which this thing can definitely enhance your 808s a lot if that's something that you're looking for. But usually 808s hit pretty hard anyway, because I'm using a keyboard essentially, or a synth plugin in this case, because it's based off of an old keyboard. Not saying that you can't achieve any sub frequencies with those, but because it was a certain time period when these were created, didn't have the sub capabilities that we do now. Not saying that it wasn't achievable, but it just wasn't as popular as it is in modern music today. The average listener is able to actually hear those frequencies, and there's a lot of stuff you can do down there, especially with film and all that stuff, being in nice theaters and Dolby Atmos and all these crazy speaker setups. Long story short, because like I said, this is based off of a Juno, those keyboards only got so low in frequency, and sometimes you just need those things to cut through in the mix and occupy some of that sub frequency in your track. And I think with something like this, which I'll show you right now, so you can hear a huge difference. It goes from this mid-range synth sound to sub. So basically with this, because this essentially wasn't an actual like sub patch, that I'm not sure if we made that or if we based it off, or it was already a preset, probably already a preset, and we tweaked it. But we liked what it was doing as a bass sound, but obviously it's not giving us the sub that we need in this track. So in this case, instead of just tweaking the preset and trying to achieve it through the keyboard itself, why not use something like this basement, where you can add sub to that, or in this case to this bass, and essentially being able to make it do something that it wasn't able to do before. And I think this, or I know for a fact that this is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. I'll just obviously talk through what's on the screen. I'm just using the saturation mode. You should definitely mess around with the synthesize mode. Even the resonate can come in handy if you want something to really like poke through. Let's see what the difference would be. So you can hear saturate, synthesize, and overfold are essentially in the same world. Obviously, the octave and the resonant are going to be two different things. I mean, these are all different things, but if you're looking for something that's going to add sub to some sort of signal that you wish had sub, I would say, for me, I like the saturate the most. The overfold and the synthesize, obviously, I could just tweak it to my liking, but for a quicker result, and like I said, it was like as soon as I opened up the plugin and hit my preset or whatever, it was already on saturate mode, so I just kept it there and tweaked it. But essentially, I mean, you can see, it's got these little helpful windows that pop up, but I don't know. I just kind of tweak these by ears. I'm not, you know, too technical with this kind of stuff. I just tweaked them until I liked it. I don't even know if the clarity even moved. I think I just kept that, and then kept the output gain the same, and then obviously just checked off over here on the options on what I would like the end result to be, or what the focus of the whole processing would be, if that makes sense. And then after that, obviously this is a big case, so now we need to go through and do our EQ. You can see so yeah, it just sounds like there's that note right there that I was probably poking through. Obviously with this plugin, it's being enhanced a lot more, so I just need a control over. You can see that I'm doing a static EQ of 1 dB. Talked about this EQ plenty of times. It's a very, I wouldn't say aggressive sounding EQ. I'm just meaning like I can hear 1 dB. You do 2 dB, you can hear it. Makes a huge difference. Like it's gonna do exactly what it's doing. This plugin is not playing games, is what I'm trying to say. And then also I added a dynamic because that note doesn't always come in, so I don't always want it to be EQ'd as much. You can see that I set the range to 3, so essentially roughly around 3 dB is what it's going to bring down for that specific note. And then I'm just doing some filtering. In my case, because I don't think anybody does for the most part, but you know, it's difficult to mix bass. It can be, especially when you're adding this much sub to something. You need something to control it. So I am for sure, yeah. Not saying this is a whole lot of compression, but for bass, it can be. Just depends on what your idea of a lot of compression is. For bass, this would be, but because this is adding sub, obviously a compressor is going to detect that sub a lot more than it is anything above a sub frequency. So it may look like it's doing a lot, or maybe to you it's not doing enough, but it is doing something, and we need to keep control of that, because if we just let it do its thing, it's going to overpower your mix. Your mix bus is going to overload. Obviously my bass bus would overload, and all this stuff, and you're just losing so much headroom. So you just definitely need to control as much sub or bass as you can. At least that's what I like to do. Leaves me plenty of headroom, and like I said, just allows me to get as loud as I need to be, or have other sounds have the room and space that they need. So this is just on this bass. You can see I have 2 different basses. So I have the Moog bass that I'm talking about. And then I have the Juno bass that just kind of comes in for the verses and the chorus, and then I think this comes in for the bridge. And after that, so yeah, same sort of idea, you know, looks like I'm doing basically, yeah, exactly same thing. EQ is exactly the same. So maybe this unfiltered basement plugin is adding some sort of resonant, or it's just saturating in a way where these, you know, same 2 notes are popping out that I'm hearing. And then let's see, just make sure. Yeah, I mean, I think these, yeah, literally the same settings. You can see like the gain is just slightly different, but other than that, like I said, at this case, I'm just like trying to slam through the bass as much as possible with these compressors. And essentially I'm just thinking of these as my control, my overall shaping and stuff like that. And then because these are 2 separate basses but the same song, we also at some point need to process them the same, which if you're familiar with my template or the way that I set things up, if you haven't seen any of those videos, go check them out. Essentially, these are gonna, all my stuff always eventually filters to some sort of similar bus eventually. And then obviously that allows me to make stems a lot quicker. But yeah, at some point, these 2 need to be processed the same because they're on the same track. And we just need to make sure that they feel exactly the same, even though they're 2 different things. So you can see I'm not doing any EQ, doing some filtering, another layer of I always say compressor, another layer of compression. But in this case, and I've talked about this before, I use the gray compressor when it comes to like overall bass. I guess we can call it bus compression. Same thing, just doing a lot of compression. In my case, this is a lot of compression, especially for bass. But you can see that compared to the silver, this is a lot quicker compressor, I believe. I could be totally wrong, but yeah, it looks like the release is a lot quicker on this. Maybe the attack slower. I don't know, but I do like the way this one sounds. I think I've said this before. To me, the silver is a little bit more grittier. This can get gritty too, but it's a lot more cleaner at first, if that makes sense. And then, like I said, obviously there's a difference between the attack and release. I've always used this for base. It's either between this or sometimes I'll use the 178B. And like 1% of the time, maybe like one mix out of the year, I'll use the stay level. If you have my template, you'll know that these are always in my, at least from this bus chain, these are always going to be used or whatever. And if you want to purchase that, you can go to my website and purchase that. It's still only 20 bucks. I decided to keep it 20 instead of 100. And that's just because I'm going to be, yeah, uploading more templates and different styles of templates and stuff. I think that's going to be the idea with that in the long run. And then after that, I have this essentially Culture Vulture box from Arturia. This is Arturia's version, but if you have UAD or the real one, yeah, this is essentially just like the Culture Vulture. So just a little bit more bite, a little bit more mid-range with this. That's usually what I'm looking for with this. Sometimes I will use it for gain, but not in the sense of like I want clean gain. Like I want it to have some like distorted gain, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Sometimes I think, yeah, having those options instead of just always having clean gain can be kind of boring. I don't know. But I think with bass, because it's such a full frequency to an extent, you can do a lot with getting gain from like a saturation or distortion plugin or piece of gear or something. But yeah, anyways, that's my spiel on that. And then I'm finishing off with this little radiator. I need to buy the big one already, but I don't know. I've gotten so used to using this one. And to me, this is just this specific preset that I have that I've made. It's just maxed out on the heat, and then the mix knob is at 5%, hence why I called it 5%. For me, this just kind of rounds off the bottom end a little bit, and just adding just a slight bit more of a different saturation point of saturation, if that makes sense. Because obviously this is doing a little bit of both saturation and distortion. You can see like with the drive and the bias and even the function, it's just gonna add and focus on a different frequency point compared to the little radiator. And the same thing with this. This is kind of, I always feel like this essentially keeps things at a certain level because we are heavily saturating or distorting at this point. I wouldn't say it's like a brick wall limiter, but it's the same idea where it's just like kind of can keep the signal in place. And then let's go here because I always forget to talk about this last part. All these buses eventually get routed to these things that I like to call buckets essentially. So this would be like my VCA groups if we were on a console or something like that. And then this is where I kind of just do like a summing thing, but that's not, I just like to say that because that's the only way I can kind of explain, or people are more familiar with summing and stuff. So that's the best way I can explain this. But it's not really summing in the sense of like, oh my God, I'm trying to do summing in the box. This is how I'm going to do it. This is just like me adding like final destinations for these points because I think doing something a little bit different with all the endpoint of each instrument and signals and vocals and all that. It just kind of separates it in the mix, but then obviously comes back together in the mix bus. Maybe that doesn't make sense, but that's just the way I like to think about these buses. But specifically bass, these all come down to this bass overall all bus. You can see it, or all bass. Yeah, all buses, I guess, is what we can also call them. But I have this 609 compressor. This is Arturia's version. This unlinks the parameters. So you can separate. So if you had like a stereo thing where the left and right is doing something a little bit different, you can affect those differently. Like maybe like if you're recording like live drums and obviously you had overheads and they're going to be slightly different. So maybe you want to compress them a little bit different. That can also add some space and movement. But what I do always do is I like to do dual mono just in case there is something different happening. I would want them to essentially compress a little bit different and do their own thing. But yeah, nothing else. I literally never mess with anything else. This is kind of just the default setting preset. I mean, I guess technically this could play a part, but you know, standard stuff. Been talking about this probably for the last like year and a half at this point. Just Varimu EQ, Mog, Studer, the Pro MB, which if you haven't seen my new technique when it comes to this. You should go check that out. It's kind of a long video, and I tried to set markers because when I rewatched it, I was like, I know people on here, short time spans and stuff, so they want to just find the juicy part, I guess. So I made markers on that. So if you haven't gone seen that, or if you have seen it and started and didn't finish it, because whatever, you can now jump to the part where I start talking about this. It was kind of hard to explain. I think I'm gonna do a follow-up video, and like I said, I rewatched what I was saying and stuff, and I was all right. How can I shorten this and have it make a little bit more sense for the people with short minds? So I'm gonna do that, and yeah, hopefully that should come out this week or something. Standard, clip, ozone, PSP. I mean, I'm in the middle of mix, so all this stuff is probably not gonna really change, for the most part. And then my master, which is before I mix bus, just the Cream 2 preamp, which I like a lot, and then just a little bit of EQ. It looks like I'm doing so far on the overall, and then SSL meters. That's pretty much it. I don't. It was it was mostly about this unfiltered, but I just figured everybody always asks questions and stuff, so just go through my whole chain. But the main thing is that this basement is like the main starting point and why I processed the way I did. Even though I do use the same plugins, obviously every song is gonna be different. But the point is that if you're looking to add sub, check out this plugin. Not sponsored or anything like that, but it is something that I've been using in the last like couple mixes because, like I said, we've been using more quote unquote vintage synths and stuff, and sometimes those don't produce as much sub and bass as you would like to. So using something like this can kind of add some life to those kind of old style synths or keyboards or whatever, especially when it comes to plugins. So anyways, hopefully this makes sense. Hopefully you find this useful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe. Check out my other videos. Go check out my template. Go check out my website. Follow me on Instagram. Check out my other videos. Buy some plugins. Use my links below. Helps me out and helps the channel out a lot. And yeah, otherwise, if there's any videos that you want to see that you're curious on how I do things, processing, editing vocals, comping vocals, you can see. Like I said, I'm in the middle of a mix, so still kind of comping stuff together or whatever. Yeah, let me know in the comments below. And otherwise, I'll see you on the next one. So, yeah, peace.